He is, of course, innocent until proven guilty, and he will and should mount a robust defense against these charges, and he should be acquitted if he didn't do what he is accused of. But if the allegations made by the Justice Department in this indictment are proven, if the former president did what he is accused of, history is going to ask a different question of this time than what we might have otherwise been expecting. If the allegations in this indictment are proven beyond a reasonable doubt and a jury convicts him of these crimes, history is not going to ask, wow, how did America get to the point where they indicted a former president? History instead is going to ask, how did America get to the point where such a person could be elected to the presidency of the United States, where actions such as these could be carried out from the Oval Office, directed by a person who was elected president by the American people, along with his advisors. This is a grave day and a serious one for our country. Thank you for being with us here tonight. We know you have every choice in the world, but we're happy to have you here on what will go down in U.S. history as a black-letter, bold-faced date. August 1st, 2023 is the date on which a former president and the leading presidential candidate of the Republican Party was indicted in federal court, accused of leading multiple criminal conspiracies to try to hold power by force after he was voted out of office by the people. Whatever satisfaction there may be in seeing the country demonstrate rather than just say that we're a nation of laws, that the laws apply to everyone in this country, no matter how powerful, whatever the sort of civic satisfaction is in seeing our country tested on that point and rising to the occasion when it needed to happen, I think everyone will now need to concede that things are about to get complicated. I mean, just in logistical terms, here we are. In addition to the 34 felony counts he is facing in New York State concerning hush money payments made to affect his election to the White House in the first place in 2016, in addition to the 40 felony counts he is facing already in federal court in Florida related to his handling of sensitive national security material and alleged destruction of evidence after he left office, now we have 4 new federal felony charges unsealed against the former president for conduct of his while he was president. He's due in court, Washington, D.C., 4 p.m. on Thursday to be arraigned on these charges. He is charged with obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. He's charged with 3 different conspiracy counts. He's charged with conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. He's charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States. And he's charged with conspiracy against rights. Now, that charge has an interesting history. It's Section 241 of the U.S. Code. And it makes it a crime to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or the laws of the United States. Now, it sounds like a general, sort of generic definition of what a crime is like. But what this specifically is something that was enacted by Congress after the Civil War, so federal agents could go after Southern whites, including the Ku Klux Klan, who were engaging essentially in terrorism to prevent Black Americans from voting. That is the origin of this part of the U.S. criminal code. So that 4th count against Trump, that conspiracy against rights, it's something that is sometimes called the Ku Klux Klan Act. It has really chilling resonance because of its historical origins. In terms of how it is used now, though, it's no longer something that is so tightly associated with racial terrorism. In the modern era, it has been used more broadly, including especially in cases of voting fraud conspiracies, vote rigging, casting false votes, conspiring to not properly count the properly cast votes in an election, all those sorts of things. Those are the 4 charges. And let's start tonight by talking about how the indictment lays this out. First of all, as I mentioned, it is unequivocally clear, and this is now new territory for us as a country, the indictment is very clear that it is about conduct that happened while Trump was president. All 4 felony counts in the indictment have specific dates on them. And they're all while Trump was president. They all start on November 14th, 2020. The significance of that date, according to the indictment, according to the special counsel's allegations against the president, is that November 14th is the day the indictment says Trump knew he lost the election. So all 4 felonies are alleged to have started to be committed as of November 14th, 2020. And the conduct described in the indictments then ends on a couple of the counts on January 7th, 2021, so the day after the attack on Congress. And the other 2 counts, the conduct ends on January 20th, 2021, so at the inauguration of Joe Biden. This is all conduct that took place while Trump was president. Now, whatever national agita we may have had about whether a sitting president can ever be held accountable for his crimes, now, as of today, we know by this action from the U.S. Justice Department that even if the U.S. Justice Department does think a sitting president can't have charges brought against him while he's still sitting as president, now we know for sure that the Justice Department is willing to bring charges against someone for actions they committed while they were president. They just apparently insist on waiting until he's out of office to bring those charges. It's interesting. He is described throughout the indictment as Donald J. Trump and the defendant. He is at one point at the very outset of the defendant described as someone who, quote, was the 45th president of the United States, but he is never again described as President Trump because he is no longer president. He is just a citizen now being charged for having tried to overthrow the government by force when he was president.